I apologize for the sound of traffic in my videos because I need the window open and people are loud during the day, but I'm here with another monthly recommendations. Everybody, welcome back. I am back with this month's monthly recommendations for the month of August. Monthly Recommendations is a Goodreads group created by Trina and Kayla Rain. I'll leave both their channels and the Goodreads group in the information down below so you guys can check it out. This month, for the month of August, monthly recommendation turns 1. It is the 1-year celebration of the monthly recommendations group that was created by Trina and Kayla, and they decided for this month to kind of do an overview of what we've done for the whole year, which is great because I've missed a couple of them. So it's really nice to go back and pick a couple of books for each theme. So every month there was a different theme, so like fantasy, recommended trilogy, recommended standalone, and they've combined all of them for this month for a 1-year celebration. So here are the books that I recommend based on those themes. The first book is an underrated book, and this is one I just recently read, and that is Stitching Snow by R.C. Lewis. If you are a fan of the Lunar Chronicles or a fan of fairy tale retellings in general, this is a book for you to pick up. I didn't pick up Stitching Snow initially just because I wasn't too sure if I would like it, and I ended up picking it up for the Booktubeathon and absolutely loved it. It was so well written, it played so much like a movie in my head, and honestly it just had those good Lunar Chronicle vibes, but being an individual solid story, it was just a great read. So it is a sci-fi Snow White retelling, and I highly recommend you guys pick this up. It doesn't get nearly enough hype, so definitely go pick up this author. She really knows how to write an action-packed, well-driven storyline. Next is a book set in school. Now honestly, I haven't read a lot of books that are set in school, so this one might be an obvious choice, but that is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. This year has been my first read-through of the Harry Potter series. I never read them when I was growing up. I read the first 2 books when they first came out, but that was it. So I didn't have the opportunity to grow up with these, so I'm reading them for the first time and thoroughly enjoying them. This was a fantastic series. You get so well invested in these characters, and you just wish Hogwarts was real. And so if you haven't read the Harry Potter series, I would recommend that for a book set in school. The next one, of course, was a creepy read, and I don't do well with creepy at all. Like, I have 0 to no creepy books on my shelf, but I did manage to find one, and this one always sneaks into a recommendations video because this is one I will recommend until you guys have all picked it up and read it, and that is the Jacobi book series by William Ritter. Jacobi is a detective for the paranormal, so you have paranormal elements in it. You have a banshee, you have some creepy mythological creatures in it, so there was a couple moments where it definitely hit a high creep factor for me, but if you can handle like Doctor Who, Sherlock type creepiness to it, like the BBC element of creepy, then you'll be able to handle the creepy in this book. But there was a couple moments where I wondered if I could actually sleep at night, so yeah, there's definitely some creep factor for me, but it does such a good series, guys. It reads like an adrenaline-packed Doctor Who episode, and I would highly recommend it. It's another one of those that just plays out in your head with your imagination so well. So if you haven't picked up Jacobi yet, pick up Jacobi. You will not be disappointed. The next recommendation is to recommend a trilogy, and I could recommend The Hunger Games or The Lord of the Rings, but I actually haven't finished The Lord of the Rings, and I feel like The Hunger Games is an obvious choice, but I am going to recommend the Anomaly trilogy by Krista McGee, which is Anomaly, Luminary, and Revolutionary. It is a dystopian post-apocalyptic trilogy, and it is amazing. Krista McGee writes a fantastic story about Talia, how she is considered an anomaly in a society that is kind of genetically built perfect. So there shouldn't be any sickness, anomalies, questioning of logic, and anybody with extreme emotions. And Talia has those emotions and is always questioning if there is something better out there. And so she is an anomaly in that society. I loved how in Anomaly you start off with one storyline. Luminary, you almost feel like you have disjointed with this storyline, but then everything at the end of Luminary becomes so beautifully full circle. Again, the writing and the storytelling in this series was just phenomenal, and it was just a great full circle story. You didn't feel like anything was missing, and you also didn't feel like you left wanting more at the end. It was so satisfying, but you wanted more books from Krista McGee. So I highly recommend the Anomaly trilogy by Krista McGee. Next, for the month of December, the theme was a book that everybody should read ASAP or before the end of the year. And for this, I chose The Choosing by Rochelle Decker. I absolutely ended up loving this one last year, as well as The Calling. This year is the second book, and then the third book is set to come out this fall sometime. I have no release date, so I didn't mention it in my anticipated releases video. I have no release date, no synopsis, and no cover reveal for it. So I have no idea when this third book is coming out, but I'm really excited. This has a beautiful story. This is a beautiful book on self-worth and loving yourself for who you are, and not finding value in being chosen, but being chosen because you are valued. It had a beautiful storyline, a great thriller aspect to it. There was a bit of a CSI murder mystery in the background of it, and of course it is a dystopian read as well. I read a lot of dystopians, but this one was definitely a highlight for me last year, as well as the sequel was a highlight for me this year. So I would recommend you guys have a chance, pick this one up. I believe it is available on Hoopla. If you have a Hoopla, definitely pick it out. That's where I first read it. The next book is a fantasy book, and you guys might not be surprised with this, but I would recommend The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you are daunted by the Lord of the Rings trilogy or find that really intimidating, start with The Hobbit. You will not be disappointed. Even if you never read the rest of the trilogy, at least read The Hobbit. This is still my all-time favorite, even though I haven't finished the Middle-earth books yet. This is still my favorite adventure story. This is still my favorite Tolkien writing. It's such a great, endearing adventure that you won't be disappointed. Plus, he's like the forefather of modern fantasy. So definitely at least pick up The Hobbit. It was still one of my all-time favorite books. Next was a book with little to no romance, and I read a lot of romance, so this actually wasn't easy for me. But I chose Paper Heart by Meg Wivet. I did a full-length review on this. This is a World War II era book about friendship, and it is set in concentration camps, and it is written in verse. So if you love poetry and you love books written in verse, this was the first book I had picked up that was written in verse, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. For a book written in verse, it still carried the full punch of a full written story. You didn't feel like details are missing, and the story still connected all very beautifully just by some of the verse and the poetry that was in here. So you're not missing much by just reading a book on verse, and it was just a beautifully written and beautifully told story, and had a great conclusion to it, and it was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, but was definitely a solid book on friendship, and would highly recommend it if you like friendship books, books with verse, and World War II era books. The next recommendation is to recommend a standalone, and this is one I also read this year, and that was Newt's Emerald by Garth Nix. This is the first Garth Nix book I've ever picked up. I saw it once on Jesse the Reader's channel, but then he never mentioned it again. So I took it out from the library just to check it out, and it was a magical realism story set in a Regency time period with a mystery fantasy element to it. It was a really well-written book, had some great solid characters, and I just loved that magical element set in a historical setting where it wasn't an everyday thing, it was just the common knowledge. So it wasn't like the magic was right in your face, but it was just a really well-written book, really great adventure, and I absolutely loved it. For my first Garth Nix book, I would highly recommend it. Gave it, I think, a 4 or a 5-star rating. It was just a really good read and had a great storyline again, and it played out really well action-packed. There was a couple slow moments, but the character development and the side characters definitely made up for those slow moments. The next two themes actually go hand in hand with my next two books, and that is your favorite survival story and your favorite book on friendship. And for that, I chose the Codename Verity duology by Elizabeth Wein, which is Codename Verity and Rose Under Fire. So Codename Verity would be the book I would recommend for friendship. This has a just heartwarming, solid friendship between these two girls, and it is heartbreaking and wonderful, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved watching how their friendship developed out of unlikely friendship to an extreme friendship where sacrifices had to be made, and it was just a beautifully written story with these beautiful characters. Absolutely loved the writing of this, as well as just the character writing of this. Elizabeth Wein wrote some really fantastic characters, so I would highly recommend picking up Codename Verity. And for a survival story, story. Rose Under Fire follows a few of the same characters, but it follows a different girl who is sent to Ravensbrück, which was the female concentration camp. And a lot of the women in that camp were experimented on for medical purposes. So it got a lot of heartbreaking content in there, but it was still a very solidly written book. And these group of women band together. They become this little family, keeping each other alive, keeping themselves alive. And it was just a beautiful story on survival and friendship, and had, again, a lot of heartbreaking content in there, but I would still highly recommend both of these books. If you haven't read them, definitely these are books that you should put on your TBR list. Like, they are just fantastic books if you haven't read these already. The next book was your favorite book set outside the US, or Canada in my case, or a book that features travel, and this kind of includes both. And this has been one that it became probably my favorite book of the year. It is a contemporary romance, and I don't read contemporary romance, but I ended up absolutely loving this book, and that is Close to You by Kira Isaac. This was a debut author, debut novel, and she just hit this one out of the ballpark. This one takes place in New Zealand, and it is a Tolkien-themed Middle-earth contemporary romance. Alison Shire is the disgraced academic who kind of runs away-ish from her past and becomes a tour guide on the sets of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies in New Zealand. And you also meet Jackson Gregory, who has recently just lost everything, including his girlfriend, to his biggest business competitor. He lost all of his money, all of his savings, all of his investors lost his money, and he's trying to win over this random out of the blue great uncle that he met who happens to be a Tolkien fan. So he gets dragged along on this crazy Tolkien adventure trying to prove that he is a real Tolkien fan. Allison, of course, can figure him out that he is a fake Tolkien fan, and shenanigans and heartwarming moments ensue. Absolutely loved how this romance was developed. Loved all the geeky, nerdy moments of Middle-earth fandom in here. It was just so cute and so well implemented, and definitely loved how it ended and how the ending was just so well done, and a lot of what happened in the past to hurt Allison was just redeemed and brought for good, and it was definitely a really good story. So it became probably my favorite book of 2016. Debut author, debut novel. Definitely go pick up Kira Isaac's Close to You. And of course, like I said, it's set in New Zealand, so it's just right there, right then. It's just an awesome storyline setting for me. And the last one for this recommendations video is your favorite empowering female lead. Now, I had a couple of them mentioned. I could mention Katniss or Gwendolyn from Chivalrous, and I'm just going to mention one that I don't think I mentioned in that video, but there's actually two characters in this book. And I'm just going to mention Evelina from The Beautiful Pretender. The Beautiful Pretender is the second book in the medieval fairy tale romances by Melanie Dickerson, of course. So it's The Huntress of Thornbeck Forest and then The Beautiful Pretender. Now, the two that are in this book are Evelina and Magdalene. Evelina is the main character, and she is a peasant who is disguised as a lady to kind of save a family from insult and ruin. And she stays really true to who she is and her convictions and her beliefs, and doesn't want to put on this fake facade and doing anything compromising to her character, like acting like a snobby rich lady or being a jerk, when she is just really kind and sweet and generous to those who are less fortunate than her. And she has so much opportunity to kind of play that off and act the lady, but she stays true to who she is the entire time. And that's what I really liked about her character. The other character I loved was Magdalene, who became friends with Evelina with no strings attached, just simply loved her for who she is. She didn't know that Evelina was hiding anything, but even so, she was just friends with her because she loved her for who she is. And it was a solid, strong friendship. And Magdalene, again, was somebody who stayed very strong to her convictions and her beliefs, and just was a very strong side character. She became probably my favorite character out of the book. For a side character, she was just really well written. She is actually going to be the main female protagonist in the third book of the series, The Noble Servant, which I am super excited about. Doesn't come out till next year though, but I'm very excited to see more of Magdalene because she just became a really strong, encouraging female character for me out of the series, as well as Evelina. Whew, that was a list. Okay, so I think I got everything covered. It was really awesome to do some of the ones that I've missed and just talk about some of the fantastic books that I found this year. I really like these monthly recommendations videos, even though I don't get to do all of them every time. But it's really good to check out other people's recommendations, and you find some really good gems to add to your own TBR. So I hope you guys found some of these interesting or found some good books at your TBR. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have read any of these, what you liked about them, what you didn't like about them. Let's talk books in the comments below. As always, guys, you can follow me on my other social media. I have Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter, so don't be afraid to follow me on there. Would love to chat with you. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!